This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Well, Cousin Adam, you and I were prepared to talk about Matt Patricia, give him a glowing review, get all excited about the next Lions head coach. Then we wake up Wednesday morning and we get the reviews that Matt Patricia may not even want to come here. His hometown base is in the East Coast, and potentially now the news is that Matt Patricia might take the job with the New York Giants. And when I saw the report, my first review was, seriously, this is where we're at with the Detroit Lions, where they go out and pursue their, by all accounts, number one choice, and he comes back. And many people will say, look, relax. This is just a smart negotiating ploy by Matt Patricia and his agents, which when I sit back and look at it, I go, you know what, that's right. Because if Bob Quinn's coming with an offer and Matt Patricia's like, well, I think I can get a little bit more, what do? You introduce another team, and that way you can kind of up maybe that first contract, because Matt Patricia, while he has a lot of experience as an assistant in the NFL, he doesn't have a lot of head coaching experience, and obviously Bob Quinn might come with a contract that might be a little bit lower than what he thinks he's worth. So what you want to do then is the basic word of the day when you're trying to do what's best for you and your family: leverage. Matt Patricia is the hot girl at the dance. Everybody's going to want her, and when you have that, then you got to say, you know what, let me pit both these teams against each other, and let's see who raises the price. But knowing that, we'll start with this. Would you be in favor of the Lions maybe dropping a lot more money maybe than they would want to get Matt Patricia, if that's the guy you want? Look, I'm not talking about 10 years, $100 million, but would you be in favor of, look, okay, fine, Matt, maybe our initial offer was a couple million a year. Let's significantly raise it to maybe even similar or close to what Caldwell was making. Would you be willing to give him $3, $4, $5 million, maybe more than you had initially thought because of who you want?
I think if you went in there and you offered him what Jim Caldwell was making, or below what Jim Caldwell was making, I think that might be a slap in his face. Now, I understand he doesn't have any head coaching experience, right? But this is the guy that Bob Quinn has gone out and targeted, and this is the guy, by all accounts, that Bob Quinn wants. For some reason, he feels a certain synergy with this man. They're of the same mind, same mindset. Everything, they see football the same exact way. So why would you go out there and why would you offer him less than what Caldwell was making? And why not offer him more? If you feel this is the guy who's going to get you to the promised land, you give him whatever he wants. And the more and more, I found this article on Sports Illustrated from November of 2016 by Tim Rowan. And it was this long piece where it just elaborated on everything that Matt Patricia has done and where he's come from and how he really is a genius. Like, legitimately, he is a rocket scientist. Like, he went to school for it. He has a degree in it, and he could have came out of college making close to six figures by sitting there and working for companies like GE or Boeing. But he chose football. He wants to do football. And it goes on to detail how he's able to basically revamp everything that Bill Belichick has done. From the way Bill Belichick sees things and gets information and organizes information, to being able to put that information in such a way that Belichick can access it easily, quickly, and be able to call on it whenever he needs.
So it sounds like you're on the recruit Matt Patricia, give him what he needs.
Originally, I was like, all right, well, Matt Patricia, maybe. I wasn't really sold on him. But after reading this article, he seems like he's the real deal. Like, he figures things out that Belichick hasn't figured out yet. And this brings me to another question for you. Now, there's all this going on. I don't know if you read the ESPN article by Seth Wickersham regarding what's going on in New England with the Patriots. This came out late last week, and it sounds very tumultuous. If Belichick decides to leave, you originally want Matt Patricia, right? He's the guy that you're looking at and you're like, I want this guy. If all of a sudden they win a Super Bowl and Belichick's like, hey, double pat the chest, 2 fingers up in the air, deuce, I'm out. Do you go after Belichick then?
Oh, of course. Hell yeah.
You have to, right?
Yeah, of course.
And if Bob Quinn doesn't, shame on Bob Quinn. So I think at this point, Bob Quinn is in a primo spot. You know, if Belichick decides to roll out in New England, you could turn the Detroit Lions into the Midwest New England Patriots. I don't care. You can rename them. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care. All right? Bring Belichick. Belichick maybe brings Patricia. He's the heir apparent. When things go, when Belichick's done sticking it to the Pats, insert Patricia. And Patricia takes over and runs with it. I'm cool with all that, man. I really am. And after reading this article on Matt Patricia, even if you wanted to skip over Belichick, I think I'd be okay with it. Because it seems like Matt Patricia is the real deal. It really seems like he has a good grasp on football knowledge. He has a good understanding. He knows how to take players and make them work for his system, or bring guys in and tailor his system to work for what he's working with. And I think that's probably most important, because you're not always going to get the guys that you need for your system. Sometimes you've got to adjust your system, and he seems like he's flexible enough, and he has the ability to coach, find the weakness of the other team, exploit that weakness by utilizing what he has, not necessarily what he wants to have.
Justin Rogers just put out a tweet. He says, "You can't convince me Patricia is playing financial hardball with his friend during his 3rd trip through the interview circuit during a period where contract negotiations are prohibited." But for me, when I start to hear that maybe Patricia is leaning somewhere else, I'm done. I'm like, you know what? If his heart's not in it, because in my opinion, it's going to take an overwhelming amount of energy.
He didn't say that. This is who said this? This is what what's his nuts? The guy who
Peter King.
Yes, Peter King. The guy who loves the Lions, then hates the Lions. Lions are going to win a Super Bowl, and they don't even make it to the playoffs because they end up going 3-13.
By the report, it seems like, he's got ties to the East Coast, and then something that you and I chatted about a little bit.
He also has ties to the general manager here in Detroit.
But something that is also probably more prevalent in his mind is the Lions are a destination where your career goes to die, based on the history. And when you look at the organizations, if you tell me I'm sitting here, I got my legs crossed up, and I'm sitting having some tea, and I got these 2 teams on the big board, and I see Detroit Lions and their logo, and I see the New York Giants and their storied history and their logo, I don't pick the Detroit Lions, period. And when you compare the 2 organizations and their history, even with lesser personnel, that's the state of the Lions, and we have to own it as fans, that the state of the Lions organization is someone would look at the Giants and their current personnel, because when you match it up currently, if you don't use the logos and their history, you just look at the current rosters, the Lions are better. But when you put the history and what's going on in terms of the entire story, the New York Giants are a much better fit for anybody, and New York City is just more appealing to anybody here in Detroit. So unless you're from here, you got ties here locally, it's tough to uproot your family and come to Metro Detroit. So when you compare the 2, unfortunately, we have to sit here and say, if you don't want this job fully, come here hardcore. I want the job. I want to turn this into a Super Bowl contending organization. I don't want the guy. You got to turn your attention to Mike Vrabel or Josh McDaniels or somebody else.
I don't want McDaniels.
Many don't. I think on our poll, I didn't even put them in terms of when you go to Twitter at Detroit Podcast. I didn't put them in the options there. But at this point in time, even though these rumors are true, people in Detroit seem to be reacting, still wanting Matt Patricia to come here. But when you look at the organizations, if you just choose, I wouldn't pick the Lions at all.
Well, let's do this, all right? And not counting history, because we all know what the Lions' history is, right? And it's not good. It's bad. Do we have that drop?
This is bad.
Yes, that one. That one right there. Thank you. Yes, this is bad. Their history is bad. It's not good, bro. So let's not compare history. Let's look at it this way. Let's look at management first, okay? Look at the family that runs the team, that owns the team. I think we all agree the Giants have a leg up there. And not saying that Martha is not doing a good job, just, again, the Fords traditionally have been a little too loyal, and that has sent the franchise back at times. Also, Martha seems to stick her nose in the business of what's going on in the front office now and again. I know she's very new to the entire situation of owning the football team, but she has come out. I love Jim Caldwell. Jim Caldwell's my side piece lover. We can't fire Jim Caldwell. He's going to be here forever. He is a fixture. I love this man. And you don't need any of that. So the Maras get the nod as far as ownership goes. All right, now let's start looking at the front office. In New York, you got a new GM going on there. Here you got Bob Quinn, who's now established.
Edge Lions.
He's had 2 years. Also, this is a guy who you're friends with, you're close with, you have a working relationship with him before. So I think as far as front office goes, the edge goes to the Lions. All right, now let's start looking at the way the team's constructed. If we talk about quarterbacks, I think you got to give it to Matt Stafford all day long. Eli Manning is at the downside of his career. He maybe will play 1 or 2 more years. The one thing that the Giants have going for them is they will probably draft a quarterback very, very high. So you get your quarterback of the future. You get the piece that you want to mold and help shape. Now, that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that your general manager is going to draft the quarterback that you find to be the ideal prototypical type for whatever offense you want to run or however you see your franchise being built going forward. Because remember, your general manager is going to do what your general manager and his scouting staff feel are most important. You're part of that scouting staff. It doesn't mean you're going to actually get the piece that you want, though. Now, if there's good synergy in that place, that's going to be the word I'm going to throw around a lot on this podcast, synergy. If there's good synergy, then your general manager is going to do what the coach wants.
At this point in time, 2018 draft, the New York Giants select second.
Yes.
That's a lot of power.
It's a lot of power.
Because you can trade, maybe even get multiple picks. You can do some things. With that pick, I mean, that's probably more appealing too because there's some quarterbacks you can get. You can trade down maybe to get some, package it and get more picks. So that's probably a little bit appealing too for Patricia as well.
You could go to Kansas City, trade them probably a 5th-round pick, get Alex Smith. And you mean to tell me you can't work with Alex Smith? Alex Smith just had the best season of his career.
You got it.
And you sit there, you pair him with Odell? Come on. You know, you've already seen what he can do with the speedster on the outside with Tyreek Hill.
Basically, it's really simple. The selling point for the Lions is easy. Stafford and Quinn. But that's it. Outside of living, that's it. That is it.
I think you got a decent set of safeties and you've got some cornerbacks here. And if you look at the way the defense is ran in New England, it's all through the secondary. He can do a lot of good things with a very good secondary. You have a very good secondary here. That the front seven sucks. It's not good. There's a lot of holes on that defensive line and in that linebacking core. You need to tighten both of those up. I think another draft, maybe a free agency class, you can help sit there and shore those things up. The way that the Giants build from the inside out, so they have a decent to very good defensive line as well as linebacking core. Their secondary is questionable at best. So I think there's some trade-off there. Now, offensively, I don't think either one of you have a really good running back. I think you both have... Detroit has a better wide receiving core. New York has a better wide receiver. Do you know what I'm saying? And then if you look at the way the offensive lines are put together, I think Detroit's heads and toes better than what the Giants are dealing with. So I think overall, I think it slightly fares for the Lions a little bit better than it does for the Giants. I think there's more working in the Lions' favor than there is in the Giants. That number 2 draft pick, though, like you said, that's a lot of power. That's a lot of power, and that could really make your eyes light up wide because you can go get whatever you want. And if you, like you said, if you wanted to, you could trade that number 2 pick. You could fall back to 12, sit there and pick up an extra 2nd-round pick and maybe even a 5th-rounder. Turn that 5th-rounder into Alex Smith. Next thing you know, you got 2 extra picks. You got Alex Smith, and you're ready to go. When you look at the Lions organization, do you kind of start to feel like maybe they have to really think outside the box? I mean, Matt Patricia is the guy that most people are targeting. Mike Vrabel is the secondary option, the plan B. It seemed to work out the last time a plan B happened with the Detroit Lions. I mean, by some things that were reported, they had sent a plane to go out and get Ken Wisenhunt. And you and I were sitting there laughing going, Ken Wisenhunt, oh my God, he's terrible. And the plan B turned out to be Jim Caldwell, which I thought you and I probably... One time we were like, that's not much better. That's not much better. But I kind of feel like it's a huge drop-off going from Matt Patricia to everybody else. And so I don't see Nick Saban coming up. I don't see Jim Harbaugh coming up. I don't see that other guy in terms of I don't see another guy that's going to bring me hope that the hire is going to make me feel as excited as Matt Patricia did. Well, let me ask you this. I don't see it. If Matt Patricia decides to go with the Giants... Oh, I'm bummed out. Do you go with... 5 wins. Do you go with Shermer? It doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't matter. Vrabel, Shermer, McDaniels, anybody. If they stick with JBC, I feel like... Oh, God, they can't stick with him. No, I feel like right then and there with that schedule
and the quality of coach that you need, you're basically getting an inexperienced guy.
I gotcha.
And it takes the 2018 expectations for me way down. I would probably not even think about going higher than 6 wins, no matter what moves were made.
So what you're saying right now is Matt Patricia
or bust.
It counts as basically a 3-game swing for you.
You got it.
So you can either enter into the season roughly 9-7, or you can enter the season 6-10.
Looking at the schedule when they posted it on the Lions Twitter, I said 8-8 right away. It's tough, man.
It's going to be a tough schedule.
That schedule looks tough.
This is what I will say, and I think you're spot on. Matt Patricia could be a 3-game swing, okay? Because he is so intelligent. And like I said, after reading this piece by Sports Illustrated, I was sold. I was like, this guy is a genius. Like, he is a genius. He is Bill Belichick in waiting, is what he is.
And this is actually, if Bob Quinn gets a chance to listen to this, he has to go out there and get Matt Patricia, because you know why? If he doesn't, his job is incrementally harder, because then you're going to have to actually hit on a lot of those draft picks.
Yep.
A lot of the free agents can't be like what you did this year in that class. Wagner and TJ Lang were bust. They didn't perform as well as we thought. That makes Bob Quinn's job inevitably harder, because Matt Patricia could coach up guys on the defensive side to do some things, but if he doesn't get them, then you're going to get an inexperienced coach, and then you're going to have to surround him with a lot more talent. So Bob Quinn's job is going to be infinitely harder if he doesn't go out and get his man. And so I'm just sitting here kind of really nervous and scratching my head going, man, if just anybody else made a pitch to Patricia, we didn't even think about that. If any other team made a pitch that was close to what he wanted, the Lions can't compete. I just don't see it.
I always thought the Giants were kind of there, but I didn't feel like they would get in striking distance. I always felt like the Lions have the leg up in this entire thing. And it all goes back to Bob Quinn. It goes back to their working relationship. It goes back to Matt Patricia knowing what Bob Quinn wants and Bob Quinn knowing what Matt Patricia wants. I'm still not afraid of the Giants. I won't be afraid of the Giants until the Giants have Matt Patricia, if that's the way it's going to go. I still feel like the Lions have a legit shot at getting the head coach that they want. And if that's Matt Patricia, I feel like they have a shot at going and getting him. Otherwise, if Belichick leaves, and again, if Belichick, now this is just fantasy, right? This is me smoking the green and getting whacked out of my brain, and me and you hanging out together and doing DMT and just like seeing Martians and aliens and just all other planets, okay? Belichick leaves. You go get Belichick, you bring him here, and what other crown could you add to this man's mantle than taking the Detroit Lions, a team that is mired in ineptitude, a team that went 0-16, one of only 2 teams. The only other team is the other place that he coached, and that's Cleveland. And there's a good shot he could go there if he really wanted to. You take one of these 2 teams, Detroit or Cleveland, you sit there, you let him rebuild the way he wants to rebuild, you let him do what he wants to do, because honestly, he is the puppet master in New England. He's the one who pulls all the strings. And then you turn around and you let him stick it to New England.
I'll say this. If they hire Bill Belichick, we'll organize a parade just to have a welcoming parade, because the hope would be eternal, but then it's the ultimate risk, because if you can't win with Bill Belichick and the Detroit Lions at his age,
at that point you
give up.
You're cursed. You're cursed. You know what? You blow the team up and you rename them the Michigan Panthers and you get some sweet ass unis. That's what you do.
And you just give up. Yeah, it's unfortunate, because we were a little excited getting Matt Patricia. At the same time, there was risk with him as well. He's got inexperience in terms of head coaching. Many people do believe that the Lions job just requires a little bit more than perfect coaching. You got to have something in terms of being able to be organized, keeping the team in order, getting the right talent, working with the general manager. It just seems like the puzzle pieces never just quite line up. They're close. When you do a puzzle, and you always get that one piece that you're like, man, I think I know this fits. It doesn't fit. And you keep trying to look, and it takes you forever, and you got those 1,000-piece puzzles, and you just can't find it.
And you just start forcing it into the spot.
I just take the puzzle and throw it out and be like, look, forget this. Puzzles are stupid.
Well, here, do you think the Lions messed up by letting Terrell Austin walk away and take a job with the Bengals? Now, look.
His defensive ratings got worse over his 3 years.
I know, but you have to remember, he lost a couple pieces on this defense. Over the course of, how long was he here? 4 years? Generally, he had a decent defense. His defense sometimes was a problem, but I think there were bigger issues all over the place, not so much with his defense. I think his defense was decent enough. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you lose Haloti Ngata, and you go back to the start of the season, the first 5 games, they had a real respectable run defense. They had a real respectable defense overall. You end up losing Haloti Ngata. Not until week 15 do you sit there and do you figure things out, and are you able to sit there and start shutting down other teams' run games? And in the end, it doesn't do you any good. I don't know if they made a huge mistake by letting him go. I find it weird because I think out of Terrell Austin and Jim Bob Cooter, I think Austin is probably the guy he's probably the better coach out of the two. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What I'm saying, does it kind of, I feel like JBC at times is in over his head. Am I out of line here?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it doesn't take people that long to recognize that the prevailing argument as to why the offense was stagnant was the lack of a running game. And many people do believe that in combination with the scheme, the talent that was put in place, it wasn't done in a way that was conducive to success. I mean, it just would indicate that, the blocking schemes, the talent that you had around it, it took them a little bit long to recognize that Amir Abdullah wasn't the guy. They kept parading him out there, and that all falls on JBC. And I feel like his name, at first, in terms of what he did with Stafford, made him a hot name. But then the other situation, once it's kind of played out the last 2 years, you don't hear his name anywhere. His stock is way down.
Yeah. I don't like the fact, especially going back to the beginning of the season, I don't like how he tried to utilize that run game. I felt at certain times he was misplaying his hand, and I felt like he was just running the ball because he knew he had to run the ball. He never devised an actual plan, never really figured out how to call the run game. He was just like, well, we played Madden, and we know we got a halfback dive here, and we know we've got a play where we can get the edge. So let's do that to the right, and then let's come back and let's do that to the left, and let's see what happens. And that was what he did the entire season. I don't ever feel like he really got a good grasp on how to facilitate a run game and to make it work. Theo Riddick's not great. You know how I feel about Amir Abdullah. Tion Green seemed to be something, I don't want to say special, but he seemed to be at times your best running back, at least the guy who gave you the best option because he would fall forward. He would pick up 2-3 yards, and then he would fall forward for, that 4th or 5th yard. It didn't matter. He seemed to be your best option as the season wore on, and still, you didn't give him the ball enough. And that goes to both the head coach, who's no longer here, and to the offensive coordinator, who is still being retained. And I'm not sure why they're retaining him. If it is because Matt Stafford came out and Matt Stafford was like, hey, I want this guy to be here. We have some continuity. I love this guy. He's my man. He's my butt pirate. It's cool. We got to roll with him. I'm not sure if that's what the deal is, okay? I think it's a big mistake for Matt Stafford to come out and basically say, I want JBC here. If you go out and you hire a brand new head coach, that head coach has to have all the autonomy in the world to bring in the staff that he wants. He has to be able to go out and decide who he wants as his offensive coordinator, who he wants as his defensive coordinator, who he wants as his special teams coach, all the way down to a guy who's just an analyst holding a clipboard, picking up used jock straps. That's all on the head coach. The head coach has to make those calls. You as the franchise player, because that's what Matt Stafford is at this point in his career. He is the franchise of the Lions. You as the franchise player of the Detroit Lions, you as the highest paid athlete in the NFL. I don't need you coming out telling whoever the next head coach is, telling your general manager that you need the old OC who can't figure out how to get a run game going. I think that's a total misstep by Matt Stafford.
Okay, get out the Doc and Jock crystal ball. How does the Jock see this playing out?
Shaking it right now.
What's going down, brother?
It's not even a crystal ball. It's a magic 8
Shake
ball.
It. Okay, here's our question for the magic 8 ball.
So I'm shaking it.
Where does Matt Patricia end up?
So originally it says outlook cloudy. Try again. So hold on, let me shake it again. Let me shake it again. It says indubitably, your wish will come true. Matt Patricia ends up a Detroit Lion, according to the Detroit Sports Podcast, Magic 8 Ball.
All right, you said it. All right, I don't believe it because...
Well, hey, look, if it doesn't come true, we're throwing this thing out the window.
If you really want to backtrack, if Bob Quinn didn't know that Matt Patricia was going to absolutely, unequivocally be the guy through back channel text or whatever scenario you got to do, send the assistant out there to New England and be like, look, are you interested? Because we're going to offer it. Then maybe, I know it sounds terrible, but to look at it, I think you then move the chess piece wrong. You maybe just had to give Caldwell another year and just let him die out. Because that schedule coming up with that, yes. He would have died out. He would have gone 5-11 and then just kind of make it unequivocally a situation where you get the next guy up because the optics look bad where you have to always go out and get your plan B.
Yeah.
It just sucks. And maybe, just maybe, Mike Vrabel is then the next guy in line, which by all accounts, that's the next man up, but I'm not thrilled by it.
Let me ask you this. How do you feel about him being the next head coach? Because I look at him very similar to a Mike Tomlin over in Pittsburgh. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, when Pittsburgh went out and made that move and brought him in, he was a coach who was more or less a minority candidate that they brought in to, I don't want to say appease the Rooney Rule, but they brought him in along those lines. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sure they had some interest in him, and I don't think he was just a token interview, but he wowed them. He originally was not the original plan, and the deal was he was going to be a head coach eventually in maybe 3-4 years. Just kind of like how Vrabel is, right? He's going to be a head coach eventually, maybe 3-4 years, but not right now. And do you go out and do you get a guy like a Vrabel if Patricia decides to go with the Giants, bring him in, and you let him grow into that position? Is that something that you do? Now, if that's the case, everything that Bob Quinn has set up to this point will have to have been a total fallacy, because Bob Quinn has come out and stated that we're in a position where we want to win now. We've got the pieces to win right now. So now you're going to sit there and take a step back from a head coach who has got you a 9-7 record this past season. You just missed the playoffs, but now you're going to bring another head coach in, and he's got to have a little bit of a learning curve. He's got to be a guy where you're going to have some growing pains. He's got to go through those bumps in the road, and hopefully on the other end of it, he becomes a really good head coach who will win you a Super Bowl, similar to what happened in Pittsburgh.
Sage Anton must have a microphone in here, because he chimed in. He tweets us at Detroit Podcast. If Martha really wants Patricia and really wants to win for the fans, tell him, if New York Giants offers you $10 million, we'll offer you 20. If they offer you 20, we'll offer you 40. Simple. Losing teams have to go the extra mile to become winning teams. Hashtag spend the money. She has it.
That's what it is. That's what you got to do.
The selling point really for the Lions, and some people are challenging our negativity here on Twitter regarding.
Always. We're not negative. We're realistic.
I'm saying
this team has been horrible forever.
I'm waiting for the reply.
What the hell's wrong with you people?
I'm waiting for the reply. I said, outside of Quinn, Stafford, and money, sell me on the Lions. And they're like, don't be a Lions fan then. You're too negative. I'm like, dude.
How is that negative?
I don't get it. I do not get it in that. That's why I'm asking. Sell me on the Lions if you can do it.
Lions fans are soft. Really and truly. I'm talking to all of you out there. You're all soft. Like, go put your tampons in and go find a corner and sit there and rock yourself to sleep. The Lions have sucked for years. Sucked horribly. So bad you went 0-16. You were the first damn team to sit there and not win a single regular season game. You sucked. You sucked horribly. It took you forever to figure stuff out. Honestly, you lost a game to a kicker who had a nub foot. What does that say about you as a squad? You suck. You're horrible. So Lions fans, you want to be soft and you want to be crybabies? Oh, you're negative. You're too negative. No, I'm realistic, bitch. I'm realistic. You know what? We suck. That's what it is. Yeah, hey, Jim Caldwell had a pretty decent season last year, 9-7. You should have won a few more games if you realistically look at it, right? You should have. You probably should have been in the playoffs, you boners, but you're not. All right, so now you got a GM who's got a set of cajoons here, a big set of balls. He wants to go do something good for the organization. Let this man go do what the hell he's got to do. And whoever sat there and said that tweet, you're absolutely right. If you're a losing organization, you suck historically. And that's what the Lions do. They suck historically. The only other organization who can challenge them for their suckitude is Cleveland. And you know what? Cleveland has played for some championships. Cleveland has won some playoff games recently. Cleveland has sat there and got to a Super Bowl. Have you? The answer is no. No, you haven't. Do you know why? Because you are garbage. You are a horrible, horrible franchise. You now have a general manager who's got a little bit of a clue. Let him do what he's got to do. You've got a owner who's got a humongous checkbook. Let her sit there and write the damn checks. You go out, you get the guy you want, and you sit there, you make things work. That's what you do. And Lions fans, take your tampons, take your maxi pads, and go cry in a corner, you bloody vages.
Perfect time for our first timeout. I love it.
Pissed me off.
We weren't even planning on talking about this. We were going to talk about the pros and cons of Matt Patricia. The universe threw us a curveball, and we handled it greatly. 30 minutes talking Lions. We probably could talk about them for 4 hours. But in the end, we got to wait and see, because similar to recruiting, this kind of thing with the coaching carousel has a lot of wrinkles to it. And sometimes you just got to kind of go with the flow. And sometimes some reports that you may think are really true, and the next day comes out, and some new stories kind of emerge. So I'm still going to sit here and cross my fingers that the Detroit Lions are going to get the right man for the job, and I hope it's Matt Patricia. But if he ends up there at a press conference with the New York Giants, I'll be sitting there with a little bit of jealousy, maybe a little tear in my eye, and going, I don't see it in the next 5 years.
You know what Lions fans are? Lions fans are those people who, you live in Michigan, You got a forecast that tells you got 6 to 10 inches of snow coming Friday night to Saturday morning, and they're the type of people who sit there and they're going to go and bitch about it. Like, oh my God, it snowed so much. Yeah, it's bad. You friggin' boners. You get your damn shovel out and you go shovel your snow and shut the hell up. Quit bitching and quit pissing and moaning, you little bitches.
All right, we'll come back right after this quick timeout. We got to talk about the national title game. It was amazing. A little bit slow start, but in terms of the ending, it was an epic overtime, some choking going on by both teams. It was fun, and I can't wait to talk about it. We'll talk about college football next and how it relates to Michigan, Michigan State. A lot of people are talking about it. Coming up after this on Doc and Jock. Doc and Jock here for our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio. At this point in time, we've recorded 800 to 900 weekly podcasts, and thank goodness we found Podomatic. Why do we use them? Real easy to use. Super easy if you're not into tech. All you got to do is record your audio, upload it to Podomatic, and within minutes, you can have your audio that's available for download to all the masses across the country and even overseas. Every single week, we get tweets from England, Scotland, Ireland telling us, thank you for keeping us in the loop regarding Detroit sports. It wouldn't be possible if we didn't have a great host site. So if you're looking to start a brand new podcast, Doc and Jock recommend one host site and one host site alone, Podomatic.com. Oh boy, my tweet set off some people selling the lines. Michael Garrett gets in. Are you kidding? In a passing league where you don't have to concern yourself with that aspect of the team, your defensive backfield is 95% set. You're 2 defenders away from giving a defensive-minded coach what he needs to improve the D and focus on the run game. New York offers zip by comparison.
See?
They're coming in. Hey,
at least that guy understands.
He understands.
He understands.
Okay, so we'll give him some love, give him a retweet, but it's just an overwhelming battle, and people think that the Lions are closer than they really are. I'm just going by history, and maybe I've been too damaged and too scarred by what the Lions have done, but at the same time, you go back and forth.
And look, I think everything that you said was spot on. You weren't wrong about anything, all right? It's just, I think the pros of what the Lions have to offer, Matt Patricia, outweigh what the Giants have to offer. The only thing the Lions don't have, and they totally screwed themselves by winning a couple games late in the season, is their draft pick. That's the only thing. I think overall, you've got a much better team than the Giants do. And I think you have a general manager that you have some continuity with, and you understand, and he understands you. I think you'd be set there.
All right, how'd you take in the college football national title game? My goodness, it was fun.
It was fun. It was a great game. Actually, I want to say it was more of a great second half, because I kind of found that first half to be a little bit boring.
Ooh.
What I ended up doing was my wife really likes wrestling, and for those who don't know, we do a wrestling podcast here, and check that out. It drops tomorrow. So the wife really wanted to watch Raw, and I was like, I got to watch the national football game. So I had everything set up where we're going to watch Raw on the laptop and we're going to watch the national football game on the big television. And she was like, can you flip-flop that? And I was like, serious? Like, you're that big of a wrestling fan? She was like, yeah, do that for me. So basically, she got to take in Raw on the big TV and I got to watch it as well. And then on my laptop, which sat just off to my right side, I had the national championship game going on. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great game. Like I said, I thought the first half was a little bit slow. I thought it was a little bit trying at times. But boy, that second half, oh my God, it was big play after big play after big play. And it was like every time you thought somebody was going to take a chokehold of the game, somebody would fire right back. You know, you've seen Alabama start to kind of come on. They score a touchdown. Next thing you know, Georgia answers. You know, and it just was like back and forth. Eventually, Alabama ties the game. They got a chance to win the game. It was incredible. It was an instant classic. It was awesome.
Many people are so butthurt regarding the fact that it was 2 SEC teams. I'm like, look, it just comes from jealousy because of the fact that really you cannot deny it any further. I know we're all Big Ten slaps here. We all love Jim Harbaugh and his $9 million. We all love what's going on with Mark D'Antonio and what he's trying to do there. But when you just rank it, SEC football in terms of entertainment value is the best. Not talking about quality, just talking about entertainment in terms of speed, passing the ball, passion. It's just a great vibe. And I'm not one of those people that hates on the SEC. I like it. I watch it. At the same time, Big Ten football is a little bit more old school bruising, that the teams that kind of do a little bit better are the defensive teams, the teams that throw the teams that play smash mouth football do a little bit better in the Big Ten, a little bit more husky offensive linemen and things like that. But does that play nationally? Not so much when you see what goes on in the SEC. What the heck? I was introduced to Georgia this season, and then just reading the articles on what's going to happen for them, the number one recruiting class going forward. They're going to have battles with Alabama maybe in the future down the line to compete for these titles. What's going on in the SEC? You can't discount and you can't bury your head in the sand because you're a fan of the Big Ten. But watching that game, I had no hate for the SEC. Similar to what you said, boring first half, and then everybody kind of started whispering on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Does Saban do it?
Yep.
Does he got the cojones to do it? And he did it. He pulled the trigger on a quarterback change.
I want to talk about Nick Saban. I also want to talk about Kirby Smart because he's done a hell of a job in Georgia. Nick Saban is a football god, right? Like everything you think Bill Belichick is, it's Nick Saban like times 3.
How do you take out a guy that's 25-2 as a quarterback?
Your dude, your quarterback, the guy who has been unbelievable for you.
How do you do that?
You pull the trigger on him because he's had a bad half of football.
Yes.
And you put in a true freshman.
Yes.
A true freshman, a guy who hasn't played a meaningful down all season, hasn't done anything all season. And on top of all that, Alabama notoriously is known for running the football, being bruising on offense, and having a smash mouth defense. Instead, you throw a quarterback in there who just lights it up down the field. Like, you totally scrapped your entire game plan. You said, you know what? This isn't working. Throw it out the window, and you're like, let's open up this playbook and see what we got. Next thing you know, they're taking shots downfield. Everything is different. It was a totally different team that second half. It was amazing. And Nick Saban sat there and had to roll out freshman after freshman after freshman after freshman. I mean, do you realize these kids were playing high school football last year? And they're out there making huge plays in one of the biggest games of the year against a team where they've got other grown-ass men who are going to go to the NFL.
If Michigan or Michigan State did that, you and I would be both taking our head and ramming it through, similar to Gus Frerotte style.
Yes.
Seriously? A freshman did that. It was
unbelievable. And Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart has taken a team that always seemed to have a lot of potential, always seemed to have a lot of talent, but could never put it together, could never really figure it out. And he got this team to a championship game and he had them in a spot to actually win the damn thing. And he did all that playing the whole season with a true freshman quarterback. Blows my mind. Blows my mind what Kirby Smart was able to do. I'm still shocked and amazed that Nick Saban has gone up against every single assistant coach he's ever played, and not one of them, one time, has ever got a win. Blows my mind that those guys haven't been able to figure him out, but that just goes to show how good of a head coach he is. He could have his right-hand man go up against him and still can't beat him. Yeah. Amazing game.
So you look at it, let's look at this one quick aspect of it. How bad did you feel for the kicker when he shanked it for Alabama? I mean, they drove back. Tua was able to, you saw why they put him in. He could throw the ball.
Yeah.
He's got poise and he's got that elusiveness. Jalen.
He's going to be a stud.
Jalen came out and said after the game, he said, look, this guy has it. And It looks like he does.
If I'm the Detroit Lions in like 2 or 3 years, whatever I got to do, move up, grab that kid. That kid is going to be special. The moment this game turned was when he threw that interception. He walked back to the sideline, and Nick Saban was ready to rip into him, just lace into him. He put his arm around Saban, like, yo, coach, I got this. Don't worry. I know I messed up. It won't happen again. And you're going to see he was just calm, cool, collected, no big deal. No big deal whatsoever. And Nick was like, all right, okay, cool. And like, this is a freshman talking to him. This is a dude who's like 17, 18 years old, maybe 19. What is going on here? And you're right. He does have it. Whatever it is, he has it. If I'm the Lions, in 3 years, I'm moving up to get that kid. I don't care what I got to wager. I'm giving it all up because you're going to move from Matt Stafford to that dude. Cool. Let's make it happen. Make it happen.
But luckily for the kid from Alabama, that the game got to overtime and they were able to weather the storm a little bit. They gave up the field goal, and then that first play by Tua was his quote-unquote freshman mistake. But then the next play, chutzpah.
Dude, how do you sit there and do you get sacked for like 17 yards, right? Like, you got to get rid of the ball. But to have the balls and to have the wherewithal and to just be able to shake it off, like Taylor Swift, shake it off. No problems whatsoever. The dude drops back and heaves a missile. And he throws it on a rope down the field. And honestly, he threw that pass when old boy was like, I don't know, at the 30 and let him run up onto it at like the 10-yard line. Like, unbelievable. He just put it exactly where he had to put it. Like, read the defense. Amazing. Like, he was not bothered. Like, hey, I got sacked. Okay, cool. Let's just pick it up right here. And it was like 2 plays. Done. You know, sack, and then, I don't know, what was like a 48-yard pass downfield? Unbelievable, dude. Blew my mind. Super talented.
Kirby
That second
Smart's
half
amazing.
was great.
And they got the number 1 recruiting class. You could say that potentially they didn't take advantage of some scenarios where they had some turnovers. They didn't put the pedal to the metal. One thing that I think people, I don't know if they're talking about it quite a bit, but if you remember that play where I think they were up, they were still up by a couple touchdowns. They had the ball driving, and then they threw the interception. That was a key play in the game, and you look at it, you go, Alabama got some breaks that they really needed. They got that quick turnover, and I think it was turnover by both teams late there in that stretch of time. But all in all, it was an enjoyable game. It was fascinating to watch, and you look at the speed. You look at, remember, the pass went from freshman to freshman, true freshman. And so the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten is the talent gap is just a little bit wider in the SEC. It's not a lot, dude, but just a little bit better than in the Big Ten.
Does it blow your mind? Because it blows my mind that you've got 3 quarterbacks that played in the national championship game, and all of them would be A1 starters for either Michigan or Michigan State. It's just like you have 3 dudes who are technically freshmen, you know, whether you be true freshmen or whether this be what Jalen Hurts, is this his second year? Is he a sophomore?
Sophomore. So
you have a sophomore and you have 2 true freshmen who just go out there and just ball out of control. And any one of those dudes could start for Michigan or Michigan State. And Michigan themselves went through, 3-4 quarterbacks this year, and they can't find a quarterback? Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. The power is in the SEC. Alabama, outstanding. Georgia's going to be great. It's going to be fun to watch these 2 teams beat the living hell out of each other every single season from here until either Saban calls it quits or Kirby Smart says, I'm done. Because Kirby Smart has it figured out, right? He is a football, I don't want to say genius, but he's a really, really good football coach. You got one right there, okay? And Nick Saban's a football god. So whatever you got to do, man, it's going to be awesome every single time they play every single season. And you can expect to see these 2 teams. You can expect to see Clemson in discussion or in the college football playoff from here until any of those head coaches go somewhere else.
Yeah, you look at the landscape and you say, okay, is Michigan State, as a supporter myself, is Michigan State anywhere close to Georgia? Hell no. Is Michigan State anywhere near Alabama? Hell no. And Michigan fans, if you're honest with yourself, the biggest thing that you got to feel is anger, frustration, because you paid $9 million in essence to try and get Nick Saban. In essence, that's what the thinking was, is that you were going to get a stone cold killer. You were going to get a guy that was going to build a program a little bit faster. And so it hasn't happened yet, but in terms of,
you got Puff and Fluff, Marshmallow Man.
Instead of Nick Saban, you got a guy that's working his way up, trying to find that quarterback to get him over the hump. But in terms of what Nick Saban is, there's really only one head coach like him in the class that he brings in terms of just bringing in talent. Now Alabama runs itself. I mean, the talent there is. The talent just keeps rolling in. It's a machine. Alabama is a machine. And that's what the hope is for Michigan, is that once it gets cranking, that it can become a machine. But in terms of just the topic that we want to talk about, I don't think teams like Michigan and Michigan State, everyone's asking, can they compete with the likes of an SEC? I feel like they can get to the playoff. You can get to the dance, but can you compete on that stage to actually win a game versus the SEC? Michigan State had the first crack at it, and they got destroyed. They got pimp slapped, and they were sent back down to the minors in essence, and they got sent with their tail between their legs, and they're still trying to rebuild. But it's all about how you want to build your team. If you want to build a team to beat Alabama, you got to build the best defense in the country. You got to go out there and stop a myriad of weapons. Look at Georgia. Georgia's recruits, if you look at it, if you're into that, they got Fromm, who's arguably an amazing passer. They got a number 1 quarterback in the entire country coming in who people are raving about is even better than Fromm. They might have to relegate Fromm to the bench with this guy coming in.
And Fromm took the place of another guy who was who was a top 5 quarterback in the nation. A top 5 quarterback in the nation. Number 1 in his state.
And unfortunately, we hate to say it here in Michigan, it can happen in the Big Ten, but it's not a Michigan team. It's Urban Meyer and Ohio State because he's got the track record because, allegedly maybe some impropriety might happen to get some guys.
He's SEC. He's the Northern SEC school.
Northern SEC. And so, unfortunately, we got to ask, how do Michigan and Michigan State get to that level? Can they? And should we even ask, we talked about it on the radio, but should we even ask for these teams to try and get to national prominence?
Well, if you're a fan, I think that you expect it.
I think it's unrealistic.
I don't. I really don't. Look,
right now.
Alabama and Georgia are on a whole other level. But you need to be able to at least get into that playoff, and you need to be competitive with those schools, right? And sometimes what will happen is somebody will come in and do the heavy lifting for you. And if that happens, hey, you're on the national stage, and once you get there, you need to play your best football. And I think if either Michigan or Michigan State get there and they play their best football, they're going to be a challenge for somebody. I don't know who it'll be. If it's Alabama, it's Alabama. If it's Ohio State, it's Ohio State. If it's Clemson, it's Clemson. Whoever it is. But the thing that I think Michigan State is lacking the most to get to that level, it's overall talent. And more specifically, you need more five-star talent. You've got a hell of a coach. Mark D'Antonio does great things with odds and ends and random pieces in 2- and 3-star guys. He'll even get the occasional 4-star guy, and he turns them into outstanding players. And he does a great job with the talent that he has, and he does a great job recruiting from the pool that he pulls from. He needs to get to the bigger pool. He needs to be able to go, and he needs to have that big stick and swing it around in the deep end. Right now, he kind of hangs out in that area where it's like 4 feet to maybe 6 feet. He doesn't want to go too far because his arm floaties might not keep his head above water. Do you know what I'm saying? And then if you're Michigan, it's a myriad of things, right? It's talented depth. If you go back and you watch that game, if you watch the national championship game, injuries happen. They're part of the game. It's what it is. All right. On top of that, you will sometimes have a quarterback who's having an off night in a bad game, and you got to replace him.
Wilton Spade goes down. We got to go to John O'Corn, baby.
Right, and that's not helping anybody.
We got to go to Brandon Peters, baby.
It's not helping. And if you look at what happened with Alabama, their left tackle goes down, they go to a freshman. Right, their quarterback gets pulled, they go to a freshman. They've got talented depth all over that team. On top of that, you've got to win some of these recruiting battles. Najee Harris, if you remember, he was a Michigan guy. He was in talks with Michigan, went to Alabama, and he ended up becoming their leading rusher that game. He's a true freshman. Alex Leatherwood, that's that left tackle I was just talking about for Alabama. He was a Michigan recruit who sat there and was flipped to Alabama. He sat there and played the entire game at left tackle. Unbelievable. Jerry Jeudy, Alabama recruit, who's also on Michigan's list. DeAndre Swift, another guy who went to Georgia. Jacob Eason, that's another guy who was on Michigan's list. This was that top 5 quarterback I was telling you about who ended up going to Georgia. On top of all that, we've already talked about it. Nick Saban has an identity. He's going to beat you up, and he's going to pound you with his defense. His defense is going to help him win one way or another, all right? But his offense is generally run it, beat you up, wear you out, grind you to dust. It seems like he scrapped that playbook and he decided to go, hey, you know what? Let's go for the jugular. We got to throw it all over the place. Let's throw it. Michigan needs to figure out an offensive identity, and with that, develop some team speed.
In 3 or 4 years, which team, Michigan or Michigan State, do you believe has the best chance to maybe get to the college title game first or get to the playoff?
I want to say Michigan State, all right? And I want to say Michigan State because I feel like you guys have a hell of a coach. I have a ton of respect for Mark D'Antonio.
Done it once, you have a chance to do it again.
Exactly. And I think at this time right now, you are structured so well to be able to make that jump because you got a quarterback, you know what you have. You got next year you've got a senior running back coming back. You have a decent offensive line, and usually I know your defense is going to take a hit because you lost Harlan Barnett. But usually that defense is pretty solid. It might not be the best, but it's usually good enough. But I'm going to say Michigan. And the reason I say Michigan is you're talking about competing with the likes of Alabama and the likes of Georgia. No matter what we say, Jim Harbaugh is a name. Jim Harbaugh sells clicks. Jim Harbaugh sells magazine covers. Jim Harbaugh sells Jumpman t-shirts and sweatshirts, all right? On top of all that...
So you're saying if they sniff the Big Ten championship, there's a chance they get in?
Yes. And what I'm saying is, even though we make fun of Jim Harbaugh for being a $9 million man who hasn't done anything, I think there's still a hell of a coach in there somewhere. He's got to figure it out. He needs to develop this team much better. And I think out of the 2 programs, he has the ability to go and pull more 5-star talent than what MSU can go get. Does that make sense?
100%.
So I think it'll be U of M. I think MSU is currently, the way it's built, is structured better to make that jump and to be able to get there. But I think in the end, in 3 years, if we had to put money on it, it would be U of M.
My argument would be Michigan State has kind of the framework and a system that is a winning system, that if you kind of find the right talent to plug into that system, you have an opportunity. And, despite what SI did in neglecting to put Michigan State on the top 25 preseason list, it was a mistake. It was kind of an honest mistake. It was kind of funny that it was in regards to a mistake made, shifting Michigan in there, and then Michigan State got neglected. It was kind of funny. But Michigan State, if they can have a healthy season, if they can kind of get some breaks and things go their way, I even think 2018 has a chance to be a season where they can do some things if the breaks fall their way. But it's really hard. Michigan, Ohio State, that Big Ten East is a tough proving ground. If you can get through it and then you play in that Big Ten title game and you face the likes of Wisconsin or an Iowa, teams that are really quality. And you got to remember now, too, a big name has kind of moved into the coaching realm into the Big Ten. Scott Frost, I think, has the opportunity to come in for Nebraska and handle his business, and they're going to try their best to put some resources into a guy to bring them back because they've been dormant for a minute. So it just doesn't get easier. It does not get easier.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it fair to say that if you're competing in the Big Ten East, you've got the toughest road to go in all of college football? Whether you be in the SEC, whether you be in the Big 12, whether you be in the ACC, anywhere else, the Pac-12, it doesn't matter. If you're in the Big Ten East, is it fair to say that you've got the most difficult road to make it to a championship game, whether it be the Big Ten championship game or it be the national title? 'Cause I think it is.
Exactly. I think that division is stacked. There are talks a little bit about maybe realigning it a little bit for the competitive balance. There's always whispers about how the leagues look in the Big Ten. But just in terms of what you watch, you definitely have to demand more. You have to get better talent. Michigan State have to go out and get better talent. They have to get better depth. And that's why we asked about Mark D'Antonio, because he's been there a minute. You know what kind of players he gets, and he's got to compete with Ohio State and Michigan for recruits, so that pinches it. Whereas the just sheer number of talent that's in Alabama, in the state alone, I mean, basically the whole state, that anybody of quality goes to Alabama. You got Georgia. You got a couple teams there that are knocking on the door perennially, but it's just going to be really tough to get over that hump because seemingly, if the future holds what people see it is, Georgia and Alabama are going to be doing a lot of battles in the coming years because of the talent that they got in terms of their recruiting classes and things like that. So
I'm telling you, dude, the next couple years, it's going to be who can fit into that fourth spot, because it's going to be Georgia, it's going to be Alabama, and it's going to be Clemson. Time and time again. It's just who will be that other team. Will it be Ohio State? Will it be Michigan State? Will Michigan surprise us all and rise up and do something? Who will it be? That's what it's going to be.
All right, our final timeout. We'll come back, a loaded Docs in session. I feel like based on surveying the landscape of the news that occurred this week, I feel like you're going to drop some haymakers and some bombs of questions.
Oh, dude, I got a ton for you.
All right.
It's packed. It's loaded.
I'm ready to deliver. Stay with us. You're listening to Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Thank you for your continued support. Free and easy way to help keep the microphones hot, the lights on here in the studios. Go visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. It's where you can go to find out what show airs when. You can click through all the banners to help us. If you want to take care of all your online shopping needs, go click through that Amazon banner. Buy any of your sport tickets by visiting DetroitSportsPodcast.com. We greatly appreciate it. We've recorded now 800 to 900 podcasts, and the reason why we've been able to grow is through your continued support, telling other people, messaging us on our Twitter pages. You can find Adam at AdamRSTROZ. Find the network at Detroit Podcast and rile it up. We love having daily sports debates. Even during this podcast, we've had debates on selling the Detroit Lions. Some people are making some pitches, throwing out some names, saying that the Lions are better than the Giants. And that's what makes this project fun, is that we can interact with you, and it's been very fruitful. We greatly appreciate it. Follow the network. Visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com.
I just want to rip my shirt off like Hulk Hogan.
The phenomenal DOC is ready to tackle your questions.
Oh, I like that. That should be your rap name.
And of course. It's not the first time I said it. I think I dropped that line on Twitter. But
I like
the phenomenal DOC is in the chair. Jock is ready with some questions. Let's see. I'm going to be succinct. I'm going to be intense. I'm going to say some things. Here we go. Doctor is in session.
But to be the man, you got to beat the man. And I'm saying, woo, right here, I'm the man. Woo!
Look for the Phenomenal DOC podcast coming this Sunday, probably. What do you got, sir?
All right, man. So being succinct is the way to be because this is jam-packed. I've got a ton of questions for you. And it's like one question and then it spirals off and I go down the spider web and it's kind of like looking for porn. Next thing you know, you're looking at some dude in a diaper who's getting his balls stepped on. It's weird. All right, so a whole lot surrounding the Pistons. What did you make of Stan Van Gundy's comments basically stating that he will not allow ESPN any extra access? Now, this comes off the heels of an ESPN article regarding LeVar Ball saying that the Lakers head coach, Luke Walton, has lost the team.
100% SVG is standing up for the coaches. People are looking at it and they say, I can understand where Stan Van and the coaching association is looking at it and going, ESPN is our partner. Why are they airing a player's dad blasting us? They're supposed to kind of highlight us, and they're kind of supposed to kind of work with us, similar to what Fox Sports Detroit does with the teams. There is this kind of journalistic kind of gray area in terms of journalists work for ESPN, but at the same time, it's a business. And if a guy like LeVar Ball is out there getting clicks, the reason why you go to ESPN.com and the first 3 stories are about LeVar Ball, the reason why reporters going to Thailand to interview LeVar Ball is the man generates clicks. But SVG is right to defend the coaching association, but absolutely wrong by coming out and stating that he's going to limit access because in America, you know, SVG's out here. He's out here ranting and raving about Donald Trump all the time and what his political views are. If you just look at the very basic nature of the First Amendment, ESPN wants access to interview SVG about basketball. They want to be the conduit to the fans, and it's wrong to limit that access, no doubt about it. But SVG's right to call out ESPN for actually airing LeVar Ball, but at the same time, you also have to be aware of the landscape. We are in a click-driven society. If LeVar Ball is that much of a marketing genius that he's able to get that much attention from everybody, it's not just ESPN. Everybody but Doc and Jock has interviewed LeVar Ball on their shows. That's what makes LeVar Ball a marketing genius. I don't blame him for doing it. I don't blame him. He's got his own interest to serve. SVG just needs to, if he wants to say something meaningful, just say, similar to what Steve Kerr did, and he came out and said, look, our society's kind of gone down this road of letting a guy like LeVar Ball market himself to be a talking head. Why is that happening? But I feel like SVG's comments are going to fall on deaf ears because nobody wants to silence a media outlet.
I think you're spot on with a lot that you say. I applaud Stan Van Gundy, though. I think it's good. You got to stand up for what you believe in, and that's what he's doing. Let's move on, though. There was a recent report that came out that said Stan Van Gundy was close to trading Reggie Jackson, but his ankle injury basically killed it off. What do you make of these reports?
Similar to you and I, when you evaluate, Stan Van watches the film, he knows. I mean, maybe his time in Detroit is going to be limited. I mean, he's on a contract for this year and next. I do believe when you survey the landscape and you ask yourself, can you win playoff rounds and can you go far with Reggie Jackson? No. In terms of late game, heroics and what he tries to do, I feel like he knows that he can upgrade. It's not to say that Reggie Jackson can't do the job and be productive. I do believe they were hoping that he could remain healthy so that they could ship him off. But in terms of now, repeated injuries, that salary, it's well aware. It's not news that the Pistons are trying to move away from it. We all see it. We don't want him on the team. The team, I think, collectively is better without Reggie Jackson. Do they play better? No. And that might have to do with coaching and the other collective talent on the floor. But I do believe SVG has soured on Reggie Jackson and is trying to actually improve the team. You haven't heard rumors of him trying to go out and get a point guard that's less than Reggie Jackson. At any time in sports, everybody knows if there's somebody better out there, you're going to go out there and find him. And it just so happens that the list of players that are better than Reggie Jackson might be lengthening as each season progresses.
Have you ever seen a relationship go so bad so quickly? I mean,
I don't think it's bad.
This is the head coach who handpicked him, though.
I don't think it's bad. I do believe that injuries sometimes derail a player. Reggie Jackson, they did believe that if you highlighted him, they took a chance on him when healthy, that he could be a guy that could lead a team and drop 18 points and be that facilitator in an offensive league. But now with injuries, but what you see with the guy in his mental status and kind of how he's handling his business, you sour on a guy. And so SVG, I do believe, is looking always to upgrade his team, and he's recognizing when you survey the landscape, there's a lot better players out there that maybe are better leaders, that are better teammates, that are better shooters, that can run an offense a lot better and can do some things. And I do believe that it's not a sour relationship. Reggie knows it's a business. He gets it, but he may not like it, and it may be affecting how he plays on the floor. But right now, the biggest problem that Reggie Jackson has is he's injury prone, and it sucks. Because he was getting better. There was a chance we could have gone out and gotten some guys.
All right, sticking with basketball. Why did Michigan State struggle so much against Ohio State? Now, Michigan State, up until, I think Monday, was ranked number 1 in the country, and they end up going to Ohio State, who's unranked, and just get their shit pushed in. I mean, there's no easy way to put it. They just get their shit pushed in.
Many people were speculating that State could run the table in the Big Ten, but covering college basketball, you recognize it's really hard to go on the road. I see Oakland, a team that struggles sometimes going out on the road and playing in the Horizon League, and then you see a team, when they come back home at the arena, they look like they just are more comfortable. They can shoot the ball. They're able to handle their business. Now, if you ask yourself, when's the last time Michigan State went on a game on CBS nationwide and kind of did some things on the road? It's not too often. It's really hard in the Big Ten to compete on the road. In that game, specifically versus Ohio State, one of those games where Ohio State just everything was working. Inside game was working, outside game was working, their defensive pressure was outstanding. And sometimes you recognize that when you're ranked number 1, you get the team's best. And Ohio State's not a crumb bum team. They're not under 500. They're a good team. They're a ranked team. And Ohio State can do some things with their bigs and their outside shooting. And so in college basketball, the things that Michigan State has to continue to work on is in big games, you got to consistently rebound, you got to have that effort, and you got to make shots. And when those things don't happen on the road, it makes it really tough. And so you get your teeth kicked in. It happens. It should happen. I think it's a great thing for Michigan State so that Tom Izzo can say, hey, these are our working points. These are the things we got to improve upon. But in the end, the ceiling is higher for Michigan State because their talent can get better than Ohio State's. But I would look to, if you just look at that contest, the big 3 in the Big Ten, Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State. Let's battle it out, baby. Let's see who's the best.
What's impressed you about both Michigan State and Michigan? Because Michigan's played really well, and the other night they ended up losing on what is a controversial and kind of a crumb bum foul.
Yeah,
and they could have beat Purdue again. Purdue's played really good basketball lately, but they seem to struggle against Michigan. And now Michigan and Michigan State will be playing each other this weekend on Saturday. So what's impressed you about both these schools up to this point?
Michigan State, just a sheer talent. I mean, Miles Bridges, Jalen Jackson, you see Cassius Winston emerging, you see multiple offensive threats, and then you see big guys. You see offensive and defensive talent that can go out and execute Tom Izzo's system. And so what you saw versus Maryland was indicative of what this team's peak can be. Versus Maryland, everything went right. They went out there on national TV and destroyed a team like Maryland that's not a below-average team. And so what talent does for you, it allows you to kind of execute your offense. You can swing the ball around. You can get inside, get outside. You can play defense. You can rebound. You can do a lot of good things. Michigan, I like watching a team like Michigan play basketball because they represent kind of the new era that people like when you see basketball, similar to the Warriors. In that what's been good with them is they've started to recognize, we got a pair of freshmen that can shoot the rock and make some shots. And so they're earning more minutes and consistently making the 3. And so with the combination of them with some veterans, that team is dangerous because at any time you're down 6, down 9, you get 2 possessions, you shoot 2 threes, you're back in the game. The big problem that John Beilein has is the top-end talent is not coming to Michigan. Top-of-the-line talent. They're going to State. They're going all around the Big Ten. What John Beilein has benefited from is an offensive system that you can plug in players that can do it. So it's efficient. It allows you to get wins. It allows you to stay in games. It allows you to be competitive. But in terms of top-end defenses, the obvious plan will be on Saturday for Michigan State to swarm the 3, not let Michigan get into a rhythm offensively. And if Michigan, sometimes is a more of a boom or bust kind of team, whereas if they're not making the 3, you're going to have a problem scoring the basketball and keeping up with the likes of a Michigan State that can score inside, score outside, across multiple talented individuals. And so that's just something that Michigan, I think they know their role. They're still always working towards bringing in bigger talent. But at the same time, when you got young talent that can go out there and start making some threes and daggers, go ahead and do it. It's great. It's going to be a good game. I think Michigan State will win by 6.
If Michigan is not hitting the 3, It will be a blowout.
Oh, it'll be a blowout. Oh, and it's happened before.
Michigan needs to hit the three. And
hit the three.
They're going to have to count on Michigan State missing quite a few times and just having lapses defensively. Michigan State, this is probably the best team Tom Izzo has had in just about forever. So Michigan's playing really high caliber basketball right now. It's just not at the level that Michigan State when they ratcheted it up. And I think the happiest guy in East Lansing is Tom Izzo, and I think he's pumped that they lost that game to Ohio State because now he can sit there and he can just grind on these guys and keep telling them that they've done nothing and that they've won nothing and that they're nothing and just keep tearing them down to build them back up because this is Tom Izzo's MO. You know, he'll sit there, he'll rip you to pieces, and then he'll build you back up, and everything's his fault. It's amazing the way he does it, the psychology that he does. It's awesome. All right. So speaking of things that are not awesome, more up and down play from your Detroit Red Wings. The other night they end up blowing a game to Tampa Bay. That coming off of the heels of a big win to Florida, and they end up winning a game in overtime when Athanasiou sits there and drills the puck home in 6 seconds. So just a total mixed bag is what you're getting out of the Detroit Red Wings right now. What's going on with this team?
Well, first and foremost, prior to the injury, Jimmy Howard was playing really well. He was solid, making some key saves, going toe-to-toe with some opposing goaltenders that have been hot.
Is that injury going to hurt this team?
I do believe so. And you saw what they look like versus a team like Tampa Bay, arguably one of the top 5 teams in the entire NHL. And sometimes they just don't measure up. They're just not as good as the top-end talent of Tampa Bay. So here's what's happened. The Red Wings have worked a little bit harder. They've cleaned up some mistakes. Okay, here's what happens in hockey, which is really, really fascinating in terms of when mistakes are made. When you're playing hockey and the pace of play is consistently in your zone, you're going to give up goals. I mean, the Wings, what they started to recognize is, you know what, we don't have to let teams dictate play to us. We can dictate play to them. And when they put forth a little bit more effort and get the puck across the zone, make those tic-tac passes that can keep the puck and play possession style, and they can get more contributions from the likes of Athanasiou, they can get more contribution from Mantha, from Larkin, you start to see that the shift is the team is kind of moving towards the transition to the top-end talent. Okay, those guys, Larkin, Athanasiou, and Mantha have been carrying the team along with good goaltending. But now, when you play a team that's a little bit deeper like Tampa Bay, you're going to get some physicality in there. You're going to get some turnover of the puck. You got to do a little bit more, and you got to limit mistakes. And sometimes the big mistakes that the Red Wings make are they don't capitalize on the power play. I mean, I think you had 4 chances on the power play versus Tampa Bay. You don't take advantage. In previous games, you started to score on the power play, take advantage of some opportunities that were given to you. But with the Red Wings, listen, this team is not devoid of talent. This team sometimes shoots itself in the foot with bad line changes, with defensive mental lapses that results in the puck going in the net. Other teams with a little bit more talent, they can kind of cover up some mistakes, and the puck's not always finding the net. With the Red Wings, in stretches where they don't play good, they're not scoring the puck enough, they don't get contribution from a lot of people like Zetterberg, Nyquist, Tatar, got to contribute a little bit more. So this is what you see with a team built this way. They're inconsistent. They can go on runs. They can play good hockey. But in terms of collectively going on, a torrid pace to get to 95 to 100 points, this team doesn't have it. They don't got enough horses to do it. This team will miss the postseason, and then the talk will be about what's next. Some rumors are starting to swirl regarding Ken Holland retiring. Some rumors are starting to swirl regarding what's going to happen next. People are starting to see some other talent that's spread across the NHL that the Wings could have had, that they could have drafted, do a lot better. And then you look at the Red Wings and you say, you committed a lot of money to guys like Zetterberg that just, you can't go 20 games without scoring a goal, that this team needs help. You just look at it, though. If Larkin, Mantha, Athanasiou do some things, the team's going to be competitive and fun. If they don't, if they're getting taken away by the other team's best defenders, you might get a 2-1 game.
All right, man, that's all I got for you. I think you're spot on in your analysis of the Red Wings. They've got to control the puck. I disagree that they are devoid of talent. I don't think they have enough talent to match up with.
I think you need probably
with teams in the East
to get to the
postseason.
You need like 10 contributing players. Right now they got 5, maybe 4 or 5 contributing players that you can count on and say, okay, who's going to score tonight? Larkin, Athanasiou, Mantha, maybe Franz Nielsen, and then maybe some contribution from some defenders, Tatar.
Nyquist,
but then who else?
Yeah,
who else is going to score the puck?
Nobody.
Yeah. So you're just waiting for Witkowski to throw down, but you see that punch? Do you want Larkin throwing down? I mean, it's nice.
No, you don't want Larkin.
He got popped.
You don't want Larkin throwing down, and you don't want Mantha throwing down, because every time they fight, they get hurt. So no.
And if you're going to get into a fight, The fight game that the Red Wings presented last week wasn't the best. I mean, they got tagged by, I think, Tampa Bay a couple times. And
don't get into fights.
Don't get into fights.
No, you're not fighters. Don't fight.
Keep it simple. Score more than the opponent. And Mrazek has to step up a little bit now in Howard's absence.
Hey, I watched a great documentary this past weekend. It's called Ice Guardians. It's on Netflix. If you get a chance, watch it. It's about how basically like elite scorers, they need... I don't want to say a goon because I feel like a goon's a bad word. I've been called a goon in my hockey
Ice Warriors?
career. Ice Guardians.
Ice Guardians.
Yeah, it's just about having the tough guy, the guy who's out there who's willing to pick up the slack for the rest of the team because it takes a certain character and it takes a certain set of characteristics to sit there and go out there and know that you're going to get your face punched and be willing to stick your face out there and take that blow. So usually those guys are the funniest guys in the locker room. They're usually good guys. They're just a little bit crazy, and they might be a sandwich short of a picnic basket. But check it out. It's really good. It's a really good documentary.
Awesome
Covers Bob
podcast
Probert.
recording.
Awesome.
I enjoyed the time with you, sir. Lots to chomp on. Some news and notes regarding the Detroit Lions always drive the conversation. I can't wait. Always check out our work, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Adam's doing great things. Everyone on the network's doing great things. Thank you for your continued support. I really enjoyed this episode.
Go Red Wings. No, I'm realistic, bitch.
This was locker room talk.
Second dick.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.